Hi, everybody. I just want to say a quick hello and welcome to our event this afternoon, How to Stay Sane and Successful This School Year. And we have a wonderful panel today that's going to engage in a really great conversation. Want to recognize that school starts online for the PV community and for probably a lot of us viewing coming in today from neighboring districts. And just a couple days, and I know we're all getting ready and we're all full of nerves, and this is something new and different. And so we really thought would be really helpful to bring in some experts to kind of help navigate all of the physical and emotional stresses that we're dealing with, our families are dealing with, our teachers, our staff, our whole community, our kiddos. And so I don't want to waste any time because we've got these wonderful women here today. I just want to kind of pass it right off to Dr. Laura Wingers, who's a clinical psychologist and the founder of Center Psychology and Consulting, located in Scottsdale, Arizona. Dr. Wingers works closely with parents and teachers and physicians and other treatment providers to identify and meet the needs of school-age children and adolescents using an integrative approach. Dr. Wingers is going to help moderate this conversation that we're going to have today. And I want to let everyone know that there will be an opportunity to ask questions. So if you have questions, obviously, sort of, if you could keep them general, not too specific. We don't want to have, personal private information on our public Facebook page, but you can feel free to pop them in the comments and we'll be watching and we will be able to direct those questions to our lovely panelists today. This is going to be recorded. So if you have to pop off, you'll be able to come back on at a later point in time and watch the rest and share this information with your friends and your networks on social media. So I don't want to delay. I just want to use every bit of the time that we have today with the four of you. So thank you, Dr. Wingers, and I'll give it over to you to welcome everyone else.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much for having us. Oh my gosh, you guys, can we even get our heads around the idea that school is starting so soon and under the circumstances that they're starting, right? So I'm really thrilled to be with all of you today and excited to see the perspective that each of you bring to this topic. And I'm hopeful that regardless of whether anyone out there listening, if you're the parent of a young child or you're the parent of an elementary school, middle school, or teen age child, that you'll come away with at least one practical tip that will help you navigate these uncertain times. I'm joined today by Sara Blanchard, who is a consultant and specialist in this area. Hopefully you'll take a look at her bio linked on the thread here. She's also the author of Flex Moms, and I encourage you to take a look at that. She's going to talk a little bit about some of the unseen labor that usually moms, let's be honest, are carrying, right? What happens with this unseen labor, the emotional, physical, scheduling labor that goes along with this time parenting while working from home, trying to school from home. I'm also joined by Dr. Beth Onufrak, who is a specialist in clinical childhood or clinical psychology for early childhood issues. She's got a really great website, Dr. Beth Kids, and some really wonderful tools, child sight tools that I think are particularly pertinent to those of you who are like, what do I do with my kindergartner, for example, right? But all of this is applicable to older kids as well. And I'm also joined by Dr. Ruchi Bhargava, who brings a unique perspective, hi Ruchi, to the fact that she's a professor at Midwestern University, where she teaches marriage and family therapy, which does a lot of training with students in their doctoral program there, and also has a private practice where she sees couples and families. So why don't we just jump right in? I'd love to hear particularly you, Sara, and kind of get started with this idea of, as parents and families are starting the school year, what are some of the concerns that are being shared about these challenges, and how do they manage school online while also managing work and other demands?
Oh, there's just so much, right? I think every mom, me included, is just like, how am I going to do this? How do I know what my needs are that I need to maintain my sanity, let alone tracking my kids' development, and what do they need to do? So one of the best things I had heard recently was actually from Dr. Nancy Reichman, who's the research director at the Colorado Women's College. And as we were talking about this burden that when you talked about it, it is often the moms. Now, I'm going to say this with the understanding that, you know, there are single moms, there's single parents out there, and they're doing all of this alone. So hat tip to them.
Right.
And right. But if we're talking, and they're doing all of what we're about to talk about, the other part of some of this is like the resentment that can build up if you're in a partnership and you're realizing you're the one that's shouldering some of these burdens. And so what she said was, there's three parts to this labor. There's the physical labor, right? The cooking, the cleaning, the laundry, the, you know, kids, like just taking care of your space. And that's the labor that's often talked about when you talk about, oh, is your partner sharing the labor? It's the visible, physical doingness. But what often goes overlooked are the other two. And that's the emotional labor, which is like, oh my gosh, my kid is melting down. What do I do? Like you're worrying about the emotional well-being of this little human in your life. And that often falls on the mom's shoulders. And then the third part is the scheduling and logistical stuff. Like, oh, it was my 5-year-old's birthday. Aren't I supposed to schedule a well check? Like I totally forgot because it's COVID. And are they even taking people? Like all of that, play dates, you know, all of these things that we do, you know, it's much easier to say, can you cook or can you clean this? As opposed to, hey, can you help me like hug this child? Because I think they're fraying a little bit and need some attention. We wind up jumping into those roles. But because physical labor is the thing that people talk about, we don't realize why we're so exhausted when our partners, or if we're lucky enough to split some of that, we're like, well, but we're splitting it 50-50. Why am I still so tired? And so just acknowledging that there's actually three parts to this caring for children and raising children in these absolutely bonkers times really helps us communicate with our partner better and say, look, I'm doing all this stuff. Can we really figure out a little bit more equitable way to manage it so I can manage myself and help the kids and our home function?
Yes. And you know what, Sarah, when we initially talked about that thought, it gave me pause, you know, it gave me pause as a working professional and a mom myself to think, wow, look at that time. Look at that time with, as you said, scheduling and, right now my child needs my undivided attention. I need to drop what I was doing over here and really concentrate on that. And then that shifting role. And I think Dr. Bhargava, you talked a little bit about that as well, right? That stress of kind of changing hats, changing roles.
Yeah, I definitely feel, I mean, my day job, I kind of feel like I have multiple roles already with being an administrator, being a faculty member, being a mentor to students, and then add on like now working from home and being a mom and just kind of going between like, okay, I had like an administrative meeting, now I have like a meeting with a student and now I have to go make lunch, and then I get reminded, oh, now I have to like fill out school paperwork. Oh, and I have to make a doctor's appointment for the kids, and then going back to another administrator meeting. It's crazy. And it's like all day long from like 8 to 5 or whatever, you know, just constantly changing hats. And going back before the pandemic, it was easy enough because I was at work at a certain place and time. And then my drive home would be my time of like, okay, now I'm going to change my hat into mom role. So then when I walked in the door, it was just all about being a mom, you know. And now it's like constant throughout the day of like shifting. Am I a mom? Am I working? Am I doing this? Am I doing that? So it's like going back and forth. And yeah,
right. Well, and so I guess maybe that's one of the first points I want to make to our audience is like, you are not alone. If you're feeling a little frayed, as you said, you are not alone. I think that's a very shared experience right now. I think it's important to recognize that. I think perhaps there's some uniqueness to that frayed feeling for parents of young children. Dr. Beth, do you have something you'd like to add there?
You know, in my private practice, I've been hearing for months about how difficult it is for mothers, more often mothers, to be balancing all of that stuff. Hats off to the dads who are contributing. Want to make sure we're not dissing them in any way.
Absolutely, yeah. We've got some great dads sharing the load here.
Absolutely. But I've been hearing moms say, there is no area in my life in which I am managing it as well as I want to. And I've even heard moms say, I feel like I'm failing in every area. And just one of my messages I like to say is that this is a time when good enough has just got to be good enough. Even if it's not what you wanted it to be or what you feel it needs to be, to just have this message to yourself that good enough right now is cutting it, and trying not to hold yourself to a higher standard about that. But Laura, when I was thinking about this question, I thought about the moms who are constantly interrupted. They're in the middle of one of those meetings that Dr. Bhargava was just talking about, and he comes. And it reminded me of a few magic words that I stumbled across in my practice many years ago. That when your young child interrupts you and says, "Mommy, mommy, mommy, I need this," the first things we usually want to say are, "No, stop, I can't," or something like, "Mommy's in a super important meeting," which means a lot to the adult, but doesn't mean anything to the child. That's irrelevant. I want some more graham crackers now. And I just wanted to share my little tip that's reply to your child, starting with the words, "I will blank in 5 minutes. I will get you your thing. I will look at your stuff in however many minutes." Whether that ends up being fulfillable or not, it, I think, gives the child a feeling of acknowledgement, a little bit of nurturance in that moment, which fosters a tiny bit of patience and hope in your ultimate responsiveness. So give that a try. I will. It's worked for 20 years for my families.
That's a really great tip, and I want to repeat that. I love that. It's not a no, wait, stop, I'll later. It's a I will. It's a joining with instead of a pushing apart, isn't it? Yeah. Exactly. Another tip I really love that might kind of piggyback on that is thanking the child for the behavior that you want them to do. Thank you so much for waiting, even though they're not waiting. They're more likely, I think, to then, "Oh, yeah, I am waiting," right? Or something along those lines. So I think that can be helpful as well. Yeah. But, one other concern I wanted to share about this as we start the school year, and what I'm hearing from a lot of families is, man, I'm having trouble concentrating. I'm having trouble getting things done. I don't feel productive. Where did my day go? What happened? Or feeling like tempers are flaring. And I want to remind folks that we're in a really unique period that's incredibly stressful. Life has changed in every area, right? For everyone, not in the same ways, but life has changed. And so those kinds of concerns are a very normal response to stress. Your brain on stress is impacted. So if you're feeling like your cognition is not what it should be, or you feeling your mood is not what it should be, recognize that that's completely normal. Now we're going to jump into some things we can do to help with that, but recognize that feeling in and of itself does not mean you're failing, right? And so let's kind of go into that next section. I'd like to hear from each of you. What's one thing, and I know it's hard to limit to one thing, but what's one thing that you feel caregivers need, or maybe need more of, to have a successful experience with the start of the school year in managing their own mental health? Sara, would you like to?
Sure.
To start?
My mentor, Tal Ben-Shahar, he's in the realm of positive psychology, but he uses this phrase, permission to be human. And giving ourselves permission to stop acting like a supermom who can power through it all and be hard and go, and just having grace with ourselves to remember that as human beings, we have fundamental needs to even reach like our baseline level of happiness. And even though we all know these things, we may not always do them. Things like getting enough sleep. Things like, eat the berries that you feed your kids. Don't just eat the chocolate. Get the exercise. Get hugs that aren't, when kids are around and they're interrupting. I don't know about you, but my kids are really touchy. And sometimes the clingy touch can really feel like, oh, but hugs and touch, when it's nourishing to you, can be really important to get. The same way we handshake. We used to handshake for business meetings. So,
Yeah.
you know, finding ways that we know, or remembering what it is that at the very basic level each one of us needs. How much sleep really do you as a human need? We're just refreshing your memory and like reminding yourself that it's not that selfish to take care of yourself right now. This, like you've said, it's unprecedented times, and we're still human through it all. So treating ourselves as such, I think, can help loosen the pressure a little.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would like to add to that. I think giving yourself grace, and along the same line as Sarah was saying, like giving yourself, like permission to forgive yourself. I've had to change my expectations for sure, in terms of like lowering my expectations and what I feel like I should achieve every day versus what I can achieve and versus what I want to achieve, kind of thing. So I
Sure.
have lists upon lists of, okay, this is what I need to get done today, and there's probably only like 2 or 3 things on there. And the other lists are like things that if I have extra time, maybe I'll get to those. But I also do feel like I've seen so many posts on Facebook about during the pandemic, people are doing projects around the house, cleaning this, cleaning that, getting this done, and I'm just like, wow, like people are getting a lot done. But then on the other hand, there's so many people like, I can't get anything done. And I think that's okay. It's like, just because you're home doesn't mean you need to like be working 24 hours a day. Like you have to kind of give yourself space and time to relax and to do exactly what Sarah was mentioning.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. It certainly made me feel like an underachiever at times when I'm like, no, I'm not learning a third language or, adding woodworking to my hobbies. I'm sorry. I'm just not.
That said, I love what you pointed out though, of like the things you need to get done. Cause I think there's something to be said about not being in this hamster wheel of like, not feeling like you made progress, just at least having some goal where you can feel like you've like moved in a direction,
Yes.
succeeded in some way. Setting yourself up with that feels really smart. So I like that.
Yeah.
One of the things that I recommend often, some folks that I work with, at bedtime, they'll just sit there and kind of go through the litany of things they didn't accomplish. And I'll say, wait a minute, don't do that. Go through the things you did accomplish. I made breakfast today. I got dressed today. Just the little things as well as the big things, and remind yourself what you have done and kind of rest in that, I think can be really helpful. So yeah, I think that's super important in lowering those daily expectations. Depending on your personality, you may or may not be a super planner, right? Like I want to know exactly what the school year is going to look like. I want to know exactly who my kids' teachers are going to be, what the schedule will be. I want to know what to expect a month from now. And boy, if that's not, this is not an opportunity for change in that regard, right? For those of us who are super planners, like we have got to just stay in the moment and roll with it, and recognize that we're not going to get all the answers. We're not going to be able to do all that planning that we would like to be able to do. And yes, it's uncomfortable, but we can tolerate that, right? Mm-hmm. Dr. Beth, what else would you like to share? Other things caregivers need or need more of to have a successful experience this year?
Yeah. As we've been talking about how hard it is for us to schedule our own days, it reminds me that really to make it through this time, one of the things kids need the most is one of the hardest for us to provide or even achieve and maintain, and that is some semblance of a daily schedule for the child. And so part of me feels guilty even mentioning this idea, because enough parents have said to me, we try to have a schedule and he will not do it. She will not have any of it. But my point about this is that it's worth continuing to try this, because without a schedule, kids are really afloat. And when kids are afloat, then their energy is afloat and their feelings are afloat. And a schedule for the day, even a semblance of one, is, I think, what anchors children's emotions and their thoughts and their energies and their their coping abilities. And when I think of a schedule, I think of something that the child could help manage themselves a little bit. I love a schedule that's tangible. Get some construction paper and cut out squares and write some words on it. Breakfast, free choice, Lego time, work time. Well, they're going to have a lot of work time. But something where this is a schedule where you could lay out these things and then say, I don't want to do these two things. I want to do them in a different order. So that the child has this, I guess I can't think of a better word than a scaffold, like a coat rack on which to hang the parts of their day. And it might then free you up a bit when to say, I will look at that in however long. I have no idea when I'm going to get to you. But what's next on your schedule? And if they're not reading yet, those schedule elements could be pictures of things. Okay. Trouble is, it does take a little bit of time to create a physical schedule. My point is that it's worth trying, and it's worth continuing to try, because it helps the kids so much, which helps you.
Yes, I love that. I think that's an important piece. And what I think I also hear in that is you're giving the child some choices as well within that. And there's some flexibility there as well. It isn't a lockstep from 9 to 9:15 we do this, and 9:15 to 9:30 we do this. It's looser chunks of time, but within this time frame, we'll accomplish these things or work on these things, and that maintains our focus. Because I think the other thing that may help with is just this sort of free-floating anxiety that I think a lot of kids are experiencing, and parents along with them, right? So we may not know what a month from now is going to look like, but we know what our day is going to look like, and we can follow that. We can manage that.
I love that. I wish I had thought of that at the beginning of COVID, because I went from like trying those super color-coded every 15-minute increment things to like, forget it, this doesn't work. I can't do anything.
Yeah, it's too much. And that's the thing. You don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, as they say, right? So if the initial attempt didn't quite work, tweak it. What didn't work about it? Was it too specific? What did I expect too much? Does my child need a little more say in this? What might we do? And if I recall, Dr. Beth, I think there's a link in our resources document of a sample family schedule, is there not?
Yes, sort of. One of the links in the resource doc, in the first section of it, is called it's kind of ambitiously titled, My Family Survival Plan. I developed it for one specific family in April, and then I realized the general applicability of it. And so one of those things is some ideas for a daily schedule and how to try that, with the caveat being that I think it took me 4 entire months to get some kind of day flow for myself. Just want to, whatever training we may have, it doesn't mean we've got it together behind the scenes here.
I understand. I totally understand. Gosh, we'll have an opportunity for some question and answer time a little bit later, but I certainly would love to hear from the audience out there. How are your kids feeling about the start of school? Which of your kids are excited and ready to go and full of hope, and which are maybe dreading it, or what are their worries? What are their concerns? Let's talk a little bit about that if we get an opportunity. Along the lines of, again, providing some practical tips for your own self-care, for your care for your child, I'd love to hear from each of you about what are some things that parents can do, or maybe, again, stop doing, that would make this job easier. One thing that I'm reminding parents is that giving your child the message that, hey, we may not have this all figured out, but we're in this together, right? Together, we will figure this out, is so important. So, that would be one thing I would encourage families is, if you have worries or frustrations, if you're upset about how school is going to look right now, I do hope that those will be conversations that you have with the adults in your life and not with your children. Not that I expect people to hide that. I don't mean it in that way, but model a positive mindset, model positive expectations. And again, if you can't quite get there, at least model that, hey, we don't have this figured out, but we're in it together. That can go a really long way for your child.
Mhm.
Other thoughts for self-care, for working with your child? There's no child mental health without caregiver mental health.
True.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, so I think for me, I really had to figure out my love-hate relationship for media. For I guess I should actually say screen time to be exact, because I don't know, just at the start of the pandemic, I was like, we can't have the kids doing screen time for 8 hours. Like, this is ridiculous. Now I'm like, thank goodness that we have the ability to use screen time, especially during meetings like this or other important meetings. Because I think, I mean, yes, there is a fine balance. And I think every household is probably, they have different perspectives on screen time.
Sure.
But for me, because I was really trying to do that whole schedule thing and trying to figure out kids' activities, but then I noticed in planning kid activities that they needed me during those activities. And I was like, okay, like I can't keep bouncing back and forth, right? So I was like, let's see. So, I mean, screen time for me is just one of those saving graces sometimes. And I think I just needed to accept that.
And once you did, it sounds like it changed things in a positive way. Yeah.
There's probably a part of me, the psychology part of me, that's like, oh, I don't know about this. But then there's the mom part of me that's like, go, have fun.
Well, and it's all about balance, isn't it?
Yes,
Like it's all about balance. I think speak to that a little bit, weren't you?
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I wish I knew. I wish there was like this line where it was like, 2 hours a day is okay on the iPad, and then you can watch a movie at night.
Yes.
But 7 hours is not okay. Like, I wish I knew what that was, because I fight that. And the only schedule we implemented so far, to your point, Dr. Beth, was we have tech time. Because I was like, you know what? I need to be able to get on the computer where it's like just guaranteed I have time to work every day.
Mhm.
But the fact that that was the only part of the schedule I really implemented was a little bit of a fail during the summer. So, we'll see how school transition goes. But speaking of tech, one of the things that I was going to say about tech is that for the adults, I feel like it's okay to step off social media. And
Thank you.
ironic that we're streaming this live on Facebook, but
A little bit of irony there.
it's such an easy thing that we think we're doing to stay connected. And it is, there's something about like, we just need brainless time, right? Like, we just need a chance to like, be like, I just need to recharge. But that winds up draining a lot of time that we could have been doing these other things that were good for us.
Yeah.
And we also often, the whole compare and despair trend that we see, like, how come their schedule seems really good? Or what about that vacation they took? Why am I not doing that? And I thought about, instead of using that, creating two things. One was what I call a good people list, where you just sit down for a day with like a blank piece of paper. Who are the good people in your life? Right? Who are the people who, like, unapologetically, you're like, I can rely on them for anything. I can talk to them. Like, I love them. And make sure you're contacting them in whatever frequency works for you. Like, has it been 6 months since you've talked to someone on your good person list? Call them. Like, take it off social media and really make it a real, like, relationship in the real world. And the other side of that is also this idea of like offering help. When you help someone, like when somebody's going through something and you say like, let me know what I can do, well, they're never going to call you. Whereas if you have like somebody's going through something, you're like, well, I don't know what to do, but I know I can make them a dinner, or I know I can watch their kids for 2 hours. So be like, hey, this week, call me. I'm going to watch your kids for 2 hours. Offer specific help, because then you sort of create this circle where then they can offer that what they can offer to you. Like, it just becomes this virtuous cycle of helping one another. And I feel like that's really what the cornerstone of community is about. And we feel a lot less isolated and in our heads when we purposely build those communities.
love that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's important to find the people and the things around you that fill you up and not drain you. And so I love that idea of really reaching out and maintaining connection. I think that there are times when you're struggling, that you feel like, I'm not fit for human company. I got nothing good to say. And so there's a tendency to withdraw. And that's exactly the thing not to do. When you're struggling, oh my goodness, you know that good people list, there's folks on there that you can call in a heartbeat and just say, you know what, I'm just having a hard time. I'm just not okay at the moment. And boy, that can make such a huge difference for you. I love that. It's another way to reach out and help, and like you said, maintain that virtuous cycle.
Yes, and along the lines of maintaining the good and healthy connections, when I was creating that family survival plan for that family, I thought about how families feel at the end of the day, often divided, frustrated, tired, irritated with each other. And where is the family cohesion? You know, the fabric of the family has been pulled and tugged upon and maybe even shredded throughout the day. And I thought about, could there be a 5 or 10 minute family meeting? Nightly would be wonderful. Hey, once a week, maybe, whatever. But a time when everybody does come together. And I think this could apply for whatever the age of the children in the household. Just to talk quickly about, hey, what are the activities coming the next day? Kind of like pre-prime the child brain for what is coming. And talk together just about what was hard today and what was good today. Just shooting out these things. How was anybody flexible today? When I think of the number of ways, especially in the beginning, that I had to just like say, well, okay, I'm doing it differently. That's difficult at the time, but the skill that was being honed all this time is flexibility. And we can ask, how is anybody flexible today? And to thank each other for their helpfulness today. Just thank anybody. Hey, thank you for waiting 5 more minutes while I ended my mega conference call with somebody. And the family expressed gratitude for anything that's going right. And if any of my families who know me, they know I'm big on jingles and little singy song things. There's nothing like a song to unify and lift spirits. Like, you know, we're the Joneses and we're so great and we're gonna get through this. That was not my best musical. That may not be in my top 40 hits. But you see, and it was
I love it.
Kindergarten and first grade
teachers.
Laugh,
it makes you enjoy it. It makes you connect. Yeah.
And just remind you that, hey, we're still together and we are a unit. And just a small thing to foster that family resilience, kind of reweave that fabric, tighten it, patch a few holes there. These guidelines are in the family survival plan. It's one of the items of the little parts of it that I just listed out, which are just aspirational. They're on that page.
Oh, thank you so much for that resource. I love that. You know, it also makes me think of some of the families I've worked with, and I'm sure some of the other families that are out there that are in difficult circumstances. You know, maybe you're in a relationship with a partner who is not the support you need, or you faced a job loss, or the illness or death of a family member. That's a really, I think we need to honor that and recognize that that's a very real thing that's happening right now as well. And so all of these same things apply, but I think there again is the opportunity to reach out, ask for help. Asking for help is a sign of strength. If you can't do it for yourself, do it for your child. And again, in the link on the resources page, we have lots of hotlines and text lines. So if you're not comfortable reaching out to someone in the community or at your child's school, there's ways to do this anonymously for free to really just get some help, get some guidance. Again, know you're not alone with whatever you're facing right now. Yeah. Another thought that I have about this, back to the tech idea, it occurs to me that depending on the age of your child, screen time serves different purposes, right? And your child, again, depending on their age, has more or less capability for increasing lengths of time. So, for example, I have a teenager, and for my teenager, that screen time that's the way that they connect with friends. And it's a really important part of their mental health to have that screen time and to have that time together. And I can hear them laughing and talking, and it gives me joy, to have that. There are times, though, for younger kids where it is an escape or it's an avoidance tactic too, right? So again, what's the purpose? What kind of content is it? I see some kids doing really cool things that are amazing, making movies and videos and doing all kinds of cool things, or exploring new interests. There's a million opportunities right now. And in fact, that's one of the things I'm really excited about with this change in schooling. I think we are revolutionizing our education system. Painfully, but we are. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in this time as well. So, I think if you're interested in some good guidelines on, what's appropriate or not for kids at this age and during this time, the American Academy of Pediatrics has some great guidelines on healthy limits, as does Common Sense Media. And those are resources may or may not be on our document, but take a look at some of those as well.
Sorry.
Please.
While you were talking about some of these limits or and also like what's appropriate, could you help me figure out something about child development? Because what you just said about teenagers and like their needs to socialize, that's like conversation, hanging out. So I can see where tech fills that need. And yet when I think about my friends with like preschool and kindergartners, they don't want to talk to each other. They want to like physically play. And then I have sort of this elementary, middle school range. And I feel like a couple of questions. One is like, is it true that most kids in that range, middle school and under, need about an hour of physical activity? Or what's that guideline that we should plug into online schooling? And then where is that transition between the kids needing to play versus talk? Is that just individual, or is there a general trend that we see in child development?
Those are excellent questions. I love that. Beth, you want to take one or both of those to start?
The first one, your thought there about movement, I just think the more the better. And I think also one of the thoughts I was going to share later was even during learning, let movement happen. When people say, he doesn't want to sit still for school, I'm saying, I don't think that I could either. I'd be up and moving and let movement happen. And in fact, the experts in brain cognition know that movement is important during the learning process even. So move. I just think the more often, the better. Get a trampoline if that is possible and bounce all around. I'm not sure, it's so hard to answer your other question there, Sarah, about, where is that line between the need for play and the need for socialization. I just know that the 4 and 5 and 6 year olds and 7 and 8 year olds in my care, they're just so sad. They're missing their friends. And interestingly, what I think is filling the need for direct play is interactive play in games, Minecraft, Fortnite, whatever, that at least they are doing on screen, and for better or for worse. But I think that is filling this gap of doing together across the age span, I think.
Yeah, that's a great point. And again, to your point about movement, again, I love that. I always tell families, kids are like puppies. You got to run them until you tire them out, right? They're going to chew on the furniture. So lots of movement, I think, is really important for young ones in particular. And of course, we know the benefits to mood, right? We know the benefits to attention. And we're going to talk next about some of the challenges that come along with kids who might learn a little bit differently. And certainly, knowing that there's some preventative things that can happen there. Another thing, though, that I think can be helpful for those kids who are missing connection with friends. And it's hard, as you said, they don't want to talk. Zoom play dates are not all that exciting to them, right? I think it can be helpful to have a quick little drive-by sometimes, by which I'm going to drop off some, I'm going to plan and I'm going to make a little something for my friend and I'm going to drop it off. And maybe I'm going to drop it off in secret, you know, it'll be a surprise that I drop off on their doorstep, and just something that they're planning, something that they're looking forward to, something that's going to happen in the future, I think can be wonderful for kids. It's really meaningful and exciting, and I'm seeing a lot of creative solutions there as well. Hope that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, love it. But let's talk a little bit about some of these other issues. You know, some families are expressing concern that online school just is not going to be a great fit for their child. And again, whether this is temporary or a longer term plan, depending on your school and your district and your individual family's needs, what can they do? What can they do if this approach is not meeting their expectations? Anybody have some initial thoughts they'd like to mention? Certainly working with the school is going to be an important part of that.
Boy, nobody wants to talk about this one.
I will, but
well, off your thought there, Laura, about communicating with the school. I think that communicating with the teachers as constructively as possible, I think is important. And with the emphasis on constructively, these teachers will be trying the very best they can under extraordinary stress. And I think that the way you approach teachers will make all the difference in their response. You're like, look, she just won't do these things that you're giving her. You know, it is not working at all. It leaves that teacher on the defensive. And I think in a place where they first have to take care of their own feelings before they can, you know, come up with a solution for your child. And so I would encourage parents in their communications with teachers to start with thanks. And start with even a bit of an uplift. I know this is so hard for you now. And it just so happens that, you know, this really isn't working very well for my son. Can we brainstorm something? Not that these teachers are going to have oodles of time to, you know, go in behind the scenes. But nevertheless, I think outreaching in these with a thanks and an uplift and hoping to get a little bit of input from the teacher.
Yeah. I think that's super important because I always go in with the mindset that teachers do have your child's best interests at heart, and they may just not have all the information they need to best reach your child. So it's really helpful to come to them not just with an ask, but with a solution. So here's what we're noticing about how school is going for our child. What we've noticed works in the past is if we do X, Y, or Z. Is that possible in this situation? We're willing to do as much as we can from home. You know, can you meet us halfway? So certainly, again, we're all learning as we go, and we'll figure this out together. Again, that message, but I think that's super important. I do think that it's important, though, to recognize that for some kids who do learn differently, maybe there's dyslexia or dysgraphia, dyscalculia, right? Maybe we have a child with symptoms of ADHD, diagnosed or not, executive function issues. First of all, as a parent, you need to educate yourself as much as possible about what that is and what it isn't, and so that you can best advocate for your child. What can you do in the environment at home that will optimize their opportunities for success? What support do you need from the teacher or from other team members at your child's school? Know that you can reach out to the principal. Know that you can reach out to the school counselor. Know that you can reach out to the school psychologist. You have these amazing professionals in the school who have this wealth of knowledge and who can really partner with you. I think there's some really nice online resources as well for families interested in learning more about these topics. The website understood.org is one of my favorites, and I've seen nods here too. I think most of you have looked at that. Understood.org is a great resource for kids with learning and attention issues. And again, how do we partner with schools? What can we do for our child? to help them in that situation. I'm certainly also getting lots of questions about a plan B or a plan C or a plan D, and I am perfectly okay with making those plans, knowing, I think rather than getting to the end of the semester and feeling like, now what, it can be important to kind of have some of those thoughts about what might we be able to do in the future as well. So reaching out in the community as well, there's certainly lots of folks who specialize in that type of assessment and consultation who can help.
Yes, and also in our resource guide, we have a whole section of tutors, tutoring possibilities. And I just want to shine a little light on one of them, Focus Tutors, FOCUS, focustutors.com. Not only provides tutoring, but also helps kids manage learning on the screen. So they're, I think I might have just frozen here. Should I say that again, Laura? Am I back?
No, we're hearing you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, great. Sorry about that. Just Focus Tutors is a really great resource for enhancing your child's learning and also just helping your child manage learning on screen. So a lot of resources there.
Yeah. And again, I think in your local community, there are community centers, there are churches, there are YMCAs that are offering some in-person supports for families who it's just not feasible for them to be at home during the workday, and trying to provide those opportunities in some schools as well, including some before care and after care opportunities as well. So certainly you can link in with some of that.
I mean, I think all of that sounds incredible, and having resources to learn about your child, and if you can afford it, to find tutors. The reality is also there are going to be a lot of people who don't have the financial resources or the time because they have multiple jobs they're working to keep food on the table and a roof over their families' heads. And
Right.
So one of the things you said, Dr. Laura, that made me think about this was, you said how to have a successful year. And one of the things that I've been mulling over is how are we defining success in our households for our children? If we're looking at it over the course of their lifespan, assuming that we'll get over this and get back to school sometime in the next couple of years, what are the skills we want our kids to have? Because right now we're preparing them for jobs that we don't even know, what they're going to be. They may not even exist yet. So what are the character traits, and instead of saying, despite COVID, despite not having school in person, they did it, like, what are the things that they're learning and building now because of COVID, and really emphasizing for children how they can still be successful, and maybe for each family, they're not like, I need to get an A or, get 100% on all of these online things. Maybe it's, I want to maintain my child's love of learning. What can I do to do that outside of online schooling? So broadening the scope of what success is, both near term and longer term, I think can help take the pressure off of like the micro pressure of day-to-day staring at a screen.
Oh, I absolutely love it. Yeah, I think that's kind of the question I'd like to maybe wrap up our discussion with is, how do we make meaning in these challenging times? What are some of the skills that we want our child to come away with? I'm a big proponent of kind of looking at the choices I make in my life through the lens of, on my deathbed, what's going to really matter to me, right? And certainly one of those messages is have I done good for other people, right? Have I been strong and resilient in the face of difficulty? And certainly I hope that's a message our kids are taking through this time. Other thoughts?
I mean, it's building off of what Dr. Beth mentioned before. And I'm curious, in these times, are people having more family dinners together or less? Like, I would love to find out, either whether it's through your patients or, what you get to see. But part of what the school, and these are going to get funny, but like the things that the kids have been taught during school, we bring to the dinner table. And so for us, we talk about, what are you most grateful for? Because the more the kids know that I'm going to ask them that at the dinner table every night, they're looking for it throughout the day.
Yeah.
They also decided I also asked them, what are you most proud of yourself for today?
Yeah.
Because then they're looking at their own actions. And even if it didn't seem challenging to me, they sometimes come up with random stuff like, I didn't hit my sister when she annoyed me, you know, and I'm like, I wouldn't have known that that was a challenge, but good for you.
Right? Absolutely.
But then they came up with their own things. They basically said, oh, we have a shout out. And I'm like, what's a shout out? Where they give credit to somebody else in the family for something they caught them doing that they really thought was extra special. And then they all always talk about you can call it many different things, but they call it their popsicle, proudsicle, and poopsicle. And I'm like, we don't normally do potty talk at the dinner table, but
let me get that. Popsicle, proudsicle, poopsicle. Yeah. I love it. Gonna use that one. Explain. I think I know what you mean.
Oh yeah, no, the popsicle, the highlight, poopsicle, your low light, and then your proudsicle, the same sort of thing. What are you proud of yourself for? Yeah. So that's another sort of funny thing that gets younger kids kind of into the conversation to start.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Girl, I'm writing that down. You know, I so love all the messages we're all talking about, which are uplifting and are also trying to help us beyond this difficult time, like looking ahead on the horizon, the end of the year, you know, what do we want to say we got to? And I often think about praising children's efforts instead of just their outcomes, especially when learning is hard. It's hard to learn this way. It's hard to understand. And rather than, no matter how pressureful and worrisome it can feel, you know, is my child learning what they're supposed to learn in this grade? To relax a bit and say, hey, you know, you kept trying at this for 5 minutes, even though it was tough, and then you took a break. Awesome. Effort versus outcome. And I've just always followed in all of my work with kids, the notion of partial credit, you know, that if somebody were to want their kid to make a bed and they just kind of like toss the pillow. And I know there's a lot of thoughts about who cares about the bed. I'm just grabbing an example.
Yeah.
So he tosses and the 2 pillows get there. You have a fork in the road. You have the choice between saying, hey, you didn't pull up the sheets, you didn't this and that, or what you did do. Hey, great start there in making the bed. Those pillows made it up there. And I just think that whenever we look at the glass half full with regard to what our kids do, then they can feel a little bit uplifted. And we all need uplift in probably every hour in these difficult days.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah, and I think it's just finding meaning in everything just slowing down, you know, like not having to run around taking the kids to like piano lessons and karate and gymnastics and this and that. It's like everything is just kind of like slow down so much that we're actually able to like enjoy our time at home, play board games, talk, have family dinners. It's nice, you know, just kind of thinking, okay, like this is nice. Things have slowed down. So what are the positives that we're finding?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that, you guys. I'm really anxious to see what questions we might have from folks who are joining us. Jessica, I don't know if now is a good time, but feel free to jump in. We have a few minutes remaining with our panelists, and I thought let's just kind of throw it out to some general questions and see what that sparks.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. And so, yeah, definitely we were keeping an eye on the questions, and pleased to say, I think that most of them, somebody did kind of speak to, but I am going to reiterate and kind of maybe we can add and expand on some of them. I'm going to start with this one question here that I think Dr. Beth, you gave a really, I think, great recommendation, but I just want to open it up and see if we have any other ideas for the whole group. My only question, this was one that came in, would be, if we are giving ourselves as adults permission to not be overachievers during this time, how does that translate for kids themselves, especially older kids? And I think that sort of point that you just made, Dr. Beth, about, you know, effort versus outcome kind of does speak to that a little bit, right? Probably no matter what age your child, but I think that's a really great point. If we're all sort of trying to moderate our expectations in our own lives and well-being, how can we make sure we're finding that balance with our kids also?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like that we tried something today, as opposed to we didn't try anything today. Or even, hey, you know, there are days when you've got to take a break. You cannot move forward. You are catatonic. Sorry, psychology word. You are in a coma on the couch. You just can't. And so if you have a day like that, hey, we had a day like that, and fresh start tomorrow. Just, I guess, glass half full is how I keep thinking about it. My friends.
There's also, I mean, that's based in research, right? They've done studies where they've broken kids into different groups, and for kids who are praised on effort versus outcome, like if they're told that their IQ is high, those kids don't work as hard on the impossible math questions, whereas the kids who are praised on their effort persevere, and they keep working longer on those impossible to solve math questions than the ones who are told they're smart. And if during these times, the biggest, you know, character trait we want to cultivate is resilience and grit and stick-to-itiveness and don't give up, that really, I think, you know, doubles down on your idea of praising effort. And then, Dr. Laura, to your point of like, especially for those kids who have needs, or, you know, who have challenges like dyslexia, dyscalculia, those sorts of things, if we're working, if your child is in that situation and you're just looking at their outcome, did you solve that math problem? Did you read that chapter? But without our brains working the same way, you're not praising how much harder they've worked just to get that same thing done. I think it could probably chip away at their confidence that they're being seen and appreciated for the effort that they're putting in there. So all the more reason, I think, to talk about effort and acknowledging their struggles as they're going through the day to day, and noticing what attitude they're bringing to the table.
Yeah, but I think it also makes me think about the fact that, again, everybody is in a different boat on this ocean, aren't they? So, you know, I think about those kids who've got the AP classes, or they're in their senior year of high school. What is this going to look like for them? What's happening there? Or what is it like for my kindergartner? This is their first experience with real school, and, you know, what's kindergarten going to look like? All through that whole spectrum, there's just so many challenges. And again, I come back to connection. Connect with other families, connect with other friends, recognize you're not alone, recognize they're not alone in this. None of this is an excuse to give up, to quit. We're going to keep working. We're going to keep working hard. We're going to find solutions, and we're going to celebrate flexibility. I really love that, because I think that's what gets a lot of us in trouble as kids and as adults, is being inflexible. And if we can learn to adapt and adjust, it goes a long way toward having a successful year.
Thank you. That's all really helpful. We did also get, understandably so, especially with school just starting, you know, this week. Obviously, lots of parents are concerned about having to navigate, you know, especially with younger children, that focus, right? So logging in, having to be online for a period of time, right, where they're going to get some instruction, depending on what model of we have a PV Connect model, we have a PV Online model. Both obviously require, you know, dedicated instructional time, and then in addition to that, you know, independent, sometimes additional time online. So sort of how to balance and navigate computers, paying attention, staying focused. We have parents saying, look, I've got little ones, I've been practicing, which that's amazing. And if you've been practicing, I applaud you, like truly, that's incredible. But for those of you like me who have not been practicing as well, I think we're all sort of trying to navigate this. And so, you know, do you have some tips? Because it can be pretty chaotic, as I'll use the word that one of the parents wrote in here. Yes, it can absolutely be chaotic. So just what's the balance there? And she's specifically talking, she's got a kindergartner and a second grader. So yeah, little ones.
Yeah, that's my wheelhouse. Actually, I'm so glad this question came up, because it gives me a moment to feature one more kind of guidepost that I wanted to share, which is in these difficult moments where you know, your child's not doing it, they're not staying on screen, they don't want to talk to the teacher, they don't want to do stuff. It can pull us into battles, like, you know, you have to, And battles often pull us into consequences. Hey, if you don't, then you're going to lose this prized thing you want. And then we're not arguing about school anymore. Now we're arguing about the meanness of you, the horribleness of you, and I hate you, and all these sad, poopsicle moments there. Right? I encourage parents, I think, at these times to prioritize your connection with your child over any consequences. Your connection. And the best way we can show our connection is through empathy statements, which is just standing in your child's shoes for a moment saying, I get it. It is hard to look on the screen. I get it. You're tired of learning this morning. I get it. You don't really want to do this. Just meeting together at the feeling, because I feel like many of the biggest strains of the day are byproducts of parent-child button heads over the difficulty of this all. And so one of the resources that I put on the page there, on the resource page, is a meme. I think it's called the Good Choices Formula meme. And it's just 3 steps when you and your child are having conflict. Respond first with some empathy. I really get your feelings here. And then maybe state the limit. But we need to just finish this part of the school. We just need to finish this part. And then maybe give 2 options. You can sit on the couch if you want to do this, or you can sit in the beanbag chair, or you can stand on your head. Many ways, several different options that your child could use to achieve this thingy just for this moment. So that's a little meme, because I know, frankly, if I'm going to remember something, it needs to be a picture with words on it. And so I made a little meme for a particular family and tossed that into the resources today.
Love that. Thank you for sharing those with us. And we did just pop it again in the comments. So if you want to take a look at it, people will be able to just click right away in the comments and see that meme.
Yeah, I like that people are preparing ahead of time for, or anticipating maybe, where we might go, because I think it's so important to be proactive rather than reactive in those moments. So I'm just going to anticipate that there may be this difficulty, and I'm going to plan accordingly. One other tip I'm going to give about focus, and particularly for the little ones, is again, that need for movement. For example, when I'm assessing a child, they're with me and we're doing some high-level assessment for 3 hours at a time. It's an intense chunk. And guess what? We stand up and do jumping jacks. We walk around the block. We have a snack. We, have fidget toys and different things to sit on, because we know that movement and cognition are related. And for young kids in particular, some heavy movement, I don't mean just wiggle fidgets, but some actual heavy input, sensory input, can really help refocus. I also think it's super important to talk to kids about these skills. There's a lovely website, this isn't for the kids so much as the parents, but from Harvard University, the Center on the Developing Child. The Center on the Developing Child has some really great information on what are some of the key executive function skills that develop in childhood. One of them is working memory. One of them is the ability to sit and sustain attention and focus. One of them is what we call inhibitory control, or the ability to sort of stop and think before we respond. One of them is cognitive flexibility. And there's some really great examples in there about activities that you do in daily life that promote those types of executive functions. And within that, to understand what's developmentally appropriate for a child. Again, are your expectations meeting what they're truly developmentally capable of? So take a look at some of those resources. But again, kids are like puppies. Make sure they get some movement, make sure they get some praise, make sure they get some treats.
It sounds like honestly, a lot of the, as you're listening, and maybe it's just me, but I'm thinking like, that would be really helpful for me. Like, it sounds like it would be, focus and, trying to do maybe movement will kind of help. Sometimes I know if I'm staring at the screen for too long, it starts to sort of glaze over, and I can't quite make out what the words are anymore if someone's sharing a document so probably, as you're looking through those sites and that information, those resources for your kids, you're probably going to find stuff that will help you as well. I would imagine. It sounds like.
I think it's also helpful to set up the environment in such a way that it's cued for certain kinds of activities. So, I saw a little one this morning who was super excited. They're going to go home this afternoon and set up their workspace for school, even though it's going to be their online, workspace. It might be as simple as, you don't have a dedicated space, hanging a sheet and making yourself a little cubby with just that sheet that's your private space, right? It doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to be yours.
I mean, to that end, I did have a question. Is it recommended more for little kids to have their own dedicated space versus like the kitchen table or something like that? How do they work better?
Yeah. I think personally, and please jump in, either of you, but I think it depends on the child, and you'll get a good sense of that over time. I think with young kids, it's certainly helpful to be monitored and to be in a space where a parent is nearby and accessible and able to kind of look at what's happening. For older kids, again, depending on their level of engagement and motivation, popping in from time to time can be helpful as well. So shared space is not necessarily a bad thing. But, the other thing I often encourage families to do is take some data. The first week or so, is just going to be everybody figuring this out. Try to keep a little log. It can be jotting something in a notebook or a note on your phone of, oh yeah, this time of day worked well, or this situation, and try to see if you can start to see some patterns emerge and adapt and adjust accordingly.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that real quick that it was really interesting because this past weekend I was setting up my son, he's 9 years old, and his little he has a desk and all that in his room. So I was like cleaning it off and getting it ready for school. And he was like, but aren't we going to do the same thing as last year in March? Like when we were just doing it at your office desk, in your bedroom. And I was like, oh, okay, you want that to be your kind of workspace too. So, it was like he already has kind of an image of what this is going to look like versus my kindergartner. He's going to be starting, and I have no idea where he wants to have his workspace, probably right next to his brother. But so that's just going to be a learning experiment. So, yeah.
Right.
Yes.
I love that. It's a great idea. Just don't be afraid to modify, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I also think that flexibility is the key. However, I'm always mindful of the great focusing power of a place and a station, to come and go from. Because at school, I guess, above kindergarten, those kids would have a place where they were sitting, where their stuff was, where they were ready to learn. Green light, ready to learn. And it just reminds me of an IG Live post from my dear friend, Danielle Worth of Worth Organizing, WURTH Organizing. I think I put her in the resources as well. She has a great post, it's her most recent one on Instagram, about creating a home station for your kid and different ideas about that. So I just think that there is, it's helpful to have that base to start or to return to come and go from, but a place like, yep, dude, this is your learning place, wherever they want it to be.
Thank you. And that's all really helpful. So this question is, again, kind of piggybacking off of everything that we were talking about, but specifically wondering if you have some advice for parents that are both simultaneously working from home and helping navigate online learning for young children. So that very serious multitasking exercise and patience and all of the things that we've been talking about today, that parents are going to have to, a lot of our community is going to, that many of you are also going to have to navigate. So young children, and you've got your own Zoom meeting and they've got their WebEx meeting, and how do we manage that?
Get good Wi-Fi.
So difficult. But the thought that just jumped into my mind is a hug break. A hug break. Their need for you is so strong. And just when you feel like, you've got to get them away, I can't be touched anymore. I've heard parents say, I'm over-touched. Nevertheless, there is a lot to be said for, I call it the 10-second rocking hug. And a 10-second hug goes deep. And it's that deep contact, a deep reconnection, and a deep settling that can actually possibly settle you as well. It's my idea, hug breaks.
I love that. And that's not just for the little ones, by the way. For me, walking by my teenager and giving them a little rub on the back or something, even if it's mom, you know that they kind of need that. And it's that way to connect. Some other thoughts, though. I mean, there's just some practical considerations, right, for families in that particular situation. Things are really high stakes in your job, and you just can't take that break. So what do you need to do? Where's your village? Who are your people that are in your pandemic pod, if they will, that are able to help you out? What tasks can you automate? If you can get the meals ready for the day ahead of time or something, and that's just taking a little bit away from your load, so that those little breaks you do have are time to connect or time for you to breathe and step away, rather than dealing with those kinds of chores, that can be super helpful. Making sure that you've got a little quiet time for yourself, whether that's whatever time of the day that happens to be, I think is also really important, so you can recharge your own batteries. But I think you do have to get just practical about what you can and can't do, and find some ways to get some support, whether that's through the school, whether that's through your family or friends or your little community. You'd be surprised. Reach out to another, mom, another caregiver. Hey, you know what? I've got this meeting Friday and I just can't. Is there a way you can be available on the phone or by Zoom to just check in with my child if they're struggling for some reason, right? I mean, there's lots of creative solutions there as well. I know it's not the answer, but again, that's part of what we're learning. We're learning on the fly here.
Mm-hmm. I've certainly heard of parents, working from home and coordinating their meetings. Like as the week goes on, having a shared, like, these are my non-negotiable meetings. I'm on, you're on, like, let's plan this ahead of time in a group calendar for the family. Mm-hmm. And then also in certain situations, it obviously depends job by job, but being a little more open to the realities with your colleagues that, hey, my kids are taking sword play right here. Like, they're here, and just being real that, like, you are an adult and are able to focus, but the kids might be in the background running around, and just to be human about it again.
Yeah.
Yes. And another thought I'm thinking here is simply the self-regulation piece. That's our psych jargon for keeping your cool, which is so hard at these times. And I just can't not mention a free resource that I've created for families, because it can be so helpful at this time. My Child Sight Tools online school for parents has a free course that's called How to Stay Calm When Your Child is Melting Down. And they're in short, bite-sized 5-minute videos that a parent could do in little bites. But the reason, and you can find that on my website, drbethkids.com, drbethkids.com. Because so many of the challenges, I think, are secondary to our kids losing it because they feel such ick coming from us. And then we had this level of problem, but now we have this level of problem. And so hard as it is, and unfair as it is, that our cool drives their cool, it's like a law of gravity. It just is. So anyway, that course may be able to help you in under half an hour.
Love it.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Well, be sure to actually add that to our resource document too. I think that'd be great. So I know I want to just be super mindful of everyone's time and just thank you all again. And I don't want to forget to also make sure to thank Lori Berman for her help on creating this resource document, and Melissa Schwartz and Kia Corrado, because without them, we wouldn't be able to do the programs that we do all summer long. So I just want to recognize their support and all of your time today, ladies. It's just been so helpful. I know it's definitely calmed my nerves. One thing that you did, Dr. Ring, is you kind of put out there, you floated, like, you kind of want to hear, how are your kids feeling about this? What are some of the emotions going on in your house? So I thought it might be interesting to just sort of, we can close on, I'll just give you some of that information, that feedback that we got from people, because it's just interesting. And I think it's a reminder that we are, again, to your point that you mentioned earlier, we all may be in different boats, but we're in the same storm. And so it is, and to some extent, I think, comforting to hear how other kids are doing, because sometimes it's hard to know, is my kid alone and feeling this way, or are they an outlier? So communicating and sharing these things, I think, helps bring us all back to that center where it's like, no, I mean, it's all normal in this very unnormal time, right? So
Yeah.
so some of the feedback we got on our comments during this time that we've been listening to the presentation is, my fourth grader is so excited. He knows his teacher and his classmates, and he knows he's returning to a safe space. So that's wonderful to hear. My first grader is in a new class and doesn't know anyone or her teacher, so is a little hesitant, which is understandable. Not sure how easy it will be to make those, that relationship building, those connections during virtual learning. So just recognizing, right, that's it's different when you don't already know some of the classmates, right? That's a little bit of a different situation for your kid. My sophomore isn't very excited about it. My preschooler is very excited about it and says he can't wait to see his teacher on computer school, which is adorable.
Love that.
So just, a wide range of feelings, depending on your individual child, just like I'm sure parents are kind of all over the map on this one too. So
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Well, I just think that what you provide with the United Parent Council is such a valuable resource to families in the district, both just in terms of sharing common experiences, as well as keeping people up to date with all the latest news with the district, providing that strong parent voice in such a large district with so diverse needs across a wide range. You guys do a great job, and it was a pleasure to be with you guys today.
thank you all, and thank you for continuing to be a partner with us as we work to do just that. So thank you all so much. So appreciate your time today, and good luck to everyone watching. Reach out to us if there's anything we can do to help support you over the next few weeks, months, whatever it shall be, the school year.
We are here.
Absolutely.
That's right. Great.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye, all.
Are we still?